For any United fan, this is just about the best place in Leeds to buy a pint. It's also home to United's youngest ever player and the club's record goal scorer. It's Peter Hotshot Lorimer.
Yeah, well, I was 39 years of age, you know, I finished at 38 and a little bit, I was just coming up to my 39th birthday. I could have played on, there's no question, but they changed the manager. Eddie left and Billy came in, and he wanted to, rather than develop the young players he had, with me sort of being as their leader, he wanted to bring in more experienced players. He brought in the Brendan Ormsbys and lads that had been around for a few years to try and get instant success, which of course it didn't work in the end, but I could have went and played elsewhere. I had offers to go play elsewhere, but and I thought that's the perfect finish for me, finishing at Leeds. I was a happy man. A friend of mine, Ronnie Tiemann, a solicitor in Leeds, who had handled a lot of my affairs when I was playing, had bought a sports club in Leeds, and he said, "We would like you to run the sports club for us. It would be a good idea." That was down in Hunslet, which I did for 2 years, and they then were selling up, and the brewery then says, "We've got a nice pub in Holbeck where all the football fans come to. Do you fancy it?" I thought, God, I'll give it a go, and here I am 30 years later. The pub trade changed dramatically, and when I took this pub, we were surrounded by Case Catalogue. Leeds was a vibrant industrial city. It's all changed. It's now like a banking city, and that side of it's gone. And of course, they've changed all the rules. There's zero tolerance to people having a drink when they're at work, and they've got canteens in the work where the workers get food at subsidised prices, so it's changed dramatically. But the part I enjoy, as you can see today, we're surrounded by our Scandinavian supporters, our Irish supporters, and that, and it's part of my life. The pub, Leeds United, that is my life, and days like this, I get both of them. Although it's not been a great day, I get both of these things. I do my stint behind the bar, although Susan says I don't do enough, but I feel at times like this, people want me this side of the bar so they can have a chat to me, and we talk about the game and the disappointment or the good days, and it seems to work. But how long I'll be in the pub game, I don't know. I mean, I sometimes think I'll pack it in, but then we have good days, and I think no, it's all's well, But you couldn't afford to live off your football earnings. No, there's got to be something other than that, And to be fair, I've spoke to some players, and they do find it difficult coping with that transformation from one minute you're in the headlines and the next minute you're having to work as a normal person do, As I say, I've been quite lucky. I've kept in touch with the football. Football's all around me, and so I'm still involved in a different way. But there's been lots of players. I seen one player on television the other day that was I can't remember his name right now, but he was driving a lorry. You've got to work. You cannot live off the kind of money we earn. I mean, the modern day player, if they sign a contract for four or 5 years on 20-25 grand a week, you're talking about earning £4 or £5 million over that period. Okay, with taxes off, they're still going to be very comfortable, but we weren't as lucky as that, but we enjoyed it. That was how it was at our time. I mean, my great friend was the great John Charles, who used to come and visit me every day, and until he died, unfortunately, a few years ago. And he was a world record transfer fee, and he went to play in Juventus. And when John told me the kind of money they were earning, you felt embarrassed for them, because it was so poor,
I would say, Sandra was 17 and we were both 17 when we started getting our hair cut by Russell. So I'm 55 now, so if you do the maths, it's a long time. We've grown old together, haven't we, kid? Yeah. So it's at Port Vale, the club I finished my career with, my knee and my ankle were giving me quite a lot of pain. I was getting through games and not training. So John Rudge, the manager at the time, was playing me on a Saturday. If there was a midweek game on the Wednesday, I would just do a little bit of lightweight work, just so I can be ready for the game on the Wednesday. If we went from Saturday to Saturday, I would just do, again, some light training. I wouldn't join him with the other lads because he was preserving me just from game to game. So I knew that day was coming, and I packed in just before my 30th birthday. I was 29. I think he was reprimanded for... Well, you know, it was difficult. It was difficult, and I know you see now more recently where players really struggle when they don't kick a ball around anymore, and I was no different. It was, I was in a pit really of depression for at least 6 or 7 or 8 months. I went out of the game because I couldn't afford to be a youth team coach. The money was so poor. I would actually make more money going away from football. You know, you make your decisions, don't you, in life, and I decided that I would work away from football. And that was tough. It was really tough. I had a short period of time trying to market sportswear and sell sportswear as a market trader, which didn't really go well at all. And I was offered a job with an insurance company, which initially was going to be a stopgap and give me a stepping stone to do something else. But I stayed with that company for 10 years, learning my trade as a financial advisor. And after 10 years, approximately, I set up my own business with a business partner of mine. My business partner unfortunately passed away 3.5 years ago, and that company now we're still operating as financial advisors, part of a large organisation called St James Place, and we provide wealth management for clients in the East Midlands. People in the local community. Basically what they were saying was that most of the people on the parish council in the 60s, 70s and 80s, and they ain't got a clue what they're talking about. So we need someone younger on the parish council. So Muggins, me, didn't think I'd get voted in, because you have to go through a by-election to get voted in. But I think I won by a landslide, because there's 8 councillors. So you can have 16 people apply, but the top 8 become the parish council for the 4 years. So I've been doing that for quite some time. I could have, you know, the financial services might not have worked, and if it hadn't have worked, it's like a crossroads. You know, you get to a fork in the road, and you go down the road where you're struggling. I know there's lots of footballers out there, ex-footballers, that are really struggling. I know that because I do commentary work for the PFA, and I speak to 1 or 2 of the PFA reps, and you know, people never remember yesterday's heroes. You know, there's a lot of footballers out there that are hitting hard times, and that's where the PFA come in. I'm not involved with the PFA, but you know, when you see high-profile players that, you know, that want a bit of help, I'm not so sure whether the people that need the help actually are getting it. There were a lot of good players in the team. I remember when I went for my first training session and looked around, you know, Paul Madeley, Eddie Gray, Trevor Cherry, you know, David Harvey in goal, Arthur Graham, Carl Harris, Brian Flynn. Paul Reaney wasn't there. But you know, they're all internationals, and to get into to train with them, you know, on Eddie Gray, you know, I haven't not mentioned Eddie, you know, was still playing. I played with Eddie and played for him, and he was a, you know, he's a fantastic human being, but he was a, you know, brilliant footballer. But then, when Alan Clark came to the club, I asked for a transfer. I ended up going on the transfer list, and when I got injured, can't remember the year, but I got injured when we got relegated at the Hawthorns against West Brom, and I got a serious knee injury. But I'd already made my mind up to sell my house and move back to the Midlands because I wanted to leave Leeds. But after that game, Alan Clark got the sack and Eddie Gray got the job. and Eddie wanted me to stay. But after the injury, I didn't get back to the same standard really, because the injury did me in a little bit. So, but I had 7 years there. Two years were on the treatment table. But it was I saw a lot of players come and go.